You're going to love this part. Insurance companies, employers, apartment managers, utility, junk mail solicitors, and everybody else is now starting to use credit scores. Car insurance underwriters, here's an interesting thing. I did a seminar a couple years ago at a State Farm office, and I actually had a conversation with the manager of the office. They will give a car insurance policy to a client that has good credit and a poor driving record faster than they'll give a policy to a client that has a good driving and poor credit. And they'll rate the amount of money that they're going to charge on that policy based on credit. So they're using it across the board for everything now. Your credit score is even being used to evaluate you as a terrorist threat in America. Air safety. Okay, how many of you are familiar with a program called CAPS 2 by chance? Okay, let me just tell you a little bit about this. This is very interesting. In 2001, they came up with the USA Patriot Act, which is uniting and strengthening America by providing the appropriate tools and resources to obstruct and battle terrorism, I think that's what it is. They started this program, and what they would do is when you would buy an airline ticket, they would ghost your credit score. Not your report, just your score. And they used your score in evaluation as a threat on the airline because of stereotypes. Number one, you have a low credit score, maybe you're depressed. You're financially in need. Maybe you took a bribe. Maybe you're carrying something on the plane. Maybe you're doing this. And they had this huge list. And so if you bought an airline ticket after this program went into place, you're in the database. Now, Congress found out about it. Everybody raised hell about it. So they came in and said, you can't do that. So the president at the time, President Bush, said, okay, well, we're going to recreate Secure Flight in 2005. You think they changed any of this? No, they didn't. So if you've flown since 2001, you're in the database, and you've been evaluated based on your credit score as a risk. So that's why credit has become such an essential part. The bottom line is very simple. Your financial DNA is your credit score or your credit report, and then your financial fingerprint is obviously going to be your score. Good credit, you can make it. Bad credit, it will break you. It's just the way it is. If you can't, and I've got people that come to me and say, hey, I want to buy a house. I'm working with this lender, but I don't have any credit. And these guys are 30, 40, 50 years old. They've been using cash their whole life, and they can't understand why they can't get a loan. I don't have any credit. I've been using cash. And so there are still a lot of people out there that just live off cash. Putting positive credit line accounts on credit reports is very easy if you know how to do it. You can use the authorized user program. You can go do CD loans at a lot of the federal credit unions and local banks. You can establish secure cards. There's a lot of ways. It takes about 6 months to do it, but you can get positive trade lines. You can use rent. You can use items that aren't reported. You can actually have the credit bureau add them.
Can you elaborate on the rent part?
Yeah, I'm going to get into it. There's a section coming up on that specifically. Okay, let's transition over to, let me just give you a brief history, and I cut down on this last time because Mark said you just need to get away from this credit bureau stuff. Anyway, I just want you to understand how the credit unions got together. In 1860, the unions were formed, credit unions were put together, were formed to provide merchant information in this country. It was formed by the mafia. The mafia was they first came up with the credit unions. They did it, they maintained blacklists. That's where the term blacklist came from, because they wanted to be able to give credit to the merchants that deserved it and not give credit to the people that didn't deserve it. Today, still, there are merchants that will post checks inside their establishments, put checks up on their cash registers, post notices. It's against federal law. It's part of blacklisting, but there are merchants that will still do it. And, it did fill a void, and it helped people establish credit, and then it went haywire. It was the stories behind how all this got to where it is why the FTC was formed in 1914. It took the FTC till almost 1960 to even get a hold on it and get the credit bureaus lined up and get the credit bureaus in order. So that's the history of the bureaus. Today's bureaus, everybody knows them. TransUnion, Experian, which is the old TRW. I'm sure you all remember TRW was a big company back in the day. Equifax and CBC and Novus is a new company that came out a couple of years ago. Really, they came together and they came out to try to focus on the mortgage market. And then Pay, Rent, Build Credit. This is PRBC. They were founded in 2002. Pay, Rent, Build Credit is actually a website where you can go and submit lines of credit that are not reported to the credit bureau, and they will establish a credit score for you. Some lenders are starting to utilize it and allow it. You can go online and look it up. So if you have a private rental, or you have somebody that's got a private rental and you've been paying a landlord for 12 months or 24 months, all you got to do is provide 12 or 24 months of canceled checks, submit it, and they should add it as a credit line. You can even get the credit bureaus to do it for you as well.
the important thing is you have to have the checks or receipt.
You gotta have some form of documentation. Absolutely. As we all know, they are for-profit entities. They don't care about you, they don't care about your credit, all they care about is their money. They're all three different, they don't communicate. They're privately owned corporations that make billions of dollars. They hate me, I'm not a fan of theirs either. They don't care, they don't act on your behalf, there's no obligation to improve your credit. I had a lady a couple weeks ago who came to me 10 years. Her BK was still on her credit report after it was supposed to be up to 7. She couldn't understand why. Of course, she had never done anything. They don't police it. They never did. Unless you take you take matters into your own hands. Okay. In addition to the big three, I want you to understand this: is that there are third-party databases that provide information to the credit bureau. The way the Fair Credit Reporting Act law is written, if you send a dispute to the bureau has to go back to the original creditor to verify it. What they do is they go to third parties on a regular basis. They go to LexisNexis. They go to Dolan Media. Well, not so much Dolan Media anymore. Choice Point, which is a check company. It's got a database on you. If you've ever had a bad check or a check that bounced, you're in their database. Check Systems, another one. Same thing. Thompson Corporation, similar to LexisNexis. It basically handles court records. Courthouse Direct's another one. Telephone and utilities, there's a database for telephone and utilities. Tenant databases, these are the top 3 tenant databases that if you've ever rented anywhere, you're in that database. What I want you to know is they all fall under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So you, by law, can go to any one of these and ask for a copy of your credit report for free from them. So if you have any questions about the impact that they may have on your main credit report at the 3, you can go and get them because they all fall under that, and you can sue them. And they fall under the same dispute process. You can send a letter saying this isn't mine, this was never late, and they can either make the corrections or you can run the gamut and take them to court. Any questions? Am I going too fast? Have I lost anybody? No questions. Okay, terrific. Okay, this is easy. Everybody knows what the credit report is. It's a report that contains all your financial data, and now it contains public records from the library. And parking tickets. Ever get a parking ticket in DC? Anybody? Ever not pay it because you never got the notice? That's what they do. They don't ever send you a notice. Next thing you know, it's on your credit report. Tank your credit score. Library, I had a guy, doctor, $60.62 by Fairfax County Library. Dropped his credit report almost 60 points. Challenged it, they moved it immediately, but they'll put it on there, and unless it's challenged, your score goes immediately down because the credit bureaus, they look at the way that the SIC code comes in on that account, and they score it that way. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it's a penny or $1 million. It's scored the same way. So even $1.62 is going to have a hit on your credit report, and the libraries are famous for not notifying you, and so is DC Parking is famous for never notifying you, and next thing you know, you got all these parking tickets. Yes, ma'am.
Is it true that if you get a red light ticket in DC and you don't get the notification and it shows up on your credit report, that you can go dispute it and get it taken off because it's not?
They only report to TransUnion. Professional accounts management only reports to TransUnion, and I can tell you, I got a golf buddy of mine sent me his credit report at 17 speeding tickets in DC. Because he flies through DC to go to Maryland, that's where his accounts are. We disputed all 17, had 14 of them removed. The other 3 came off the next 2 letters. A year later, had 14 more. Did the same thing. Finally, I said, John, take the bus, quit speeding. Come on, man. So and TransUnion, and the reason that they don't dispute, they don't even doubt it, is because DC is famous for not notifying anyone. They just put it on the credit report and they think they're going to get their money. So. Yeah. Well, most of the time they do. But then if you don't ask them to take it off, they'll just mark it as paid. That's another area I'll talk about, because getting stuff off credit reports is easy. If you just have to ask sometimes, and they'll remove it.
So I'm sorry. So for an example, I had something like for over the years for my children having my car or whatever, parking tickets, and so they told me an amount. I paid it all off, and then 2 weeks later they came back and said, "Oh, we forgot this one. You still owe us $100." So what do you do in that case?
Dispute it at the bureau level. Don't contact DC. Just send a letter to the credit bureau saying this isn't mine, and dispute it. And I'll go into that process. But yeah, it's they do that. They fish and they mine all the time for that. Everyone knows what's on the credit reports, all this stuff. The library fines and parking tickets are some of the things that they've been putting on new. So that's what you can find on the credit report. Who can see or pull it? Okay, this is really great. Permissible purpose gives anybody the opportunity to look at your credit report. That is granting you credit that has your written permission. Employers, if you give it in writing, they can review or collection accounts. This is really a big gray area because anybody that thinks they have a collection against you can pull your credit report. Employment considerations, insurance underwriting, applications for government licensing, response to a court order, FBI investigations, and then the biggest one, under the USA Patriot Act, the government can pull your credit report for any reason, anytime, does not matter, under the auspice of terrorist threat. Do you need to really worry about that? No, unless you're into something that's not good. But still, you know, you look at the permissible purpose and you think, well, who can get into my report? Well, anybody really can if they've got a reason. If they do view it and they're not supposed to, under false pretenses, it's only 2 years in prison. No fines up to 2 years. They can be fined, but they never do. How long do the items stay? I get this question more than anything that people ask me. Bankruptcies, 7 to 11, 12 remain for 10 years from the day they were filed. Chapter 13 should come off in 7 years from the day they were filed. Bankruptcies, last year I had 15 removed. And here's how. The bankruptcy court has to verify the bankruptcy. So when you send a letter to the credit bureau, and the gray area about the Fair Credit Reporting Law that makes my job so much fun and most people don't understand is that it doesn't matter if you know it's your account. That's not the way the law is written. The law is written is they can't list a negative account if you request it to be proven accurately. Well, the lobbyists wrote the credit law for the credit bureau. So they wrote the law saying unless the credit bureau receives a letter from a consumer stating this is not mine, and you have to use that verbiage, or this was never late, by law the credit bureau doesn't have to do anything. But if they receive a letter with that verbiage, they've got to go back to the original creditor and get verification that it's accurate. So even if you know it's your charge-off or your judgment or your collection or your bankruptcy or your foreclosure or your short sale, if you send a letter to the bureau saying this is not mine, you're not breaking the law. And here's the reason why. The credit bureau keeps a separate database. So how many of you in this room know for a fact that if the negative item on your credit report has your correct Social Security number attached to it? Anybody know that? Do you know if it's to the penny? Do you know the day that it was posted? Do you know the date that it's supposed to come off? Do you know any of that? No, you don't. But you know the only way that they can do an investigation is if you send a letter saying this isn't mine. Then they have to prove that it's accurate. What happens is in a bankruptcy or foreclosure or short sale situation, they've got to go back to the original creditor. Well, how many clerks of the court are going to provide that documentation? Not a lot. So when they go back and they do that bankruptcy investigation and they don't get documentation within 30 days, they delete it off the credit report.
What about a rolling credit problem? Say with a mortgage that got behind and the person's still paying on it, but it's...
You can still dispute it as never late. And what happens is the credit bureau doesn't notify the entity, it doesn't notify the creditor that it's removed or updated. If an electronic transmission comes through again and it comes through with a late payment on it or a late date, it could end up back on the report. But I rarely see that. And if it does, you just send the letter stating this has been deleted or this has been updated and they'll recorrect it.
Did you say that the clerk or anybody that you challenge, they have 30 days to respond with the verification of the information you're challenging?
Mm-hmm.
So if, I mean, I'm just using your bankruptcy example. So a clerk of court receives a letter from one of our clients and the client says, no, this isn't mine, or
Right.
this is not mine.
Right.
They have 30 days from the time
Right.
they receive that letter to respond
Right.
back to the individual or to
Delete
the
it.
credit bureau.
Yeah. Well, it's going to come. Well, let me just verify. Let me explain that. The 30-day window gets pushed to 45 days on a regular basis by the credit bureaus, and here's the reason why. The law is written that if you introduce any new information into an investigation, the credit bureau gets an additional 15 days. So let's say you have a client that has 10 items, and that client mails out 25 letters because each item is reported to each bureau once, so that's 3 times per item. So let's say it's 30 letters. Well, some of those letters get there one day, the next set of letters get the next day. So what does the credit bureau do? They take full advantage of the law and they go, oh, well, we received new information the next day, therefore we have 45 days. And they use that on a regular basis. So chances of it happening within the 30-day time frame, like I tell all my clients, it's a 45-day minimum process period. Don't expect any change before 45 days. It can take up to 120 to go through the 3-letter process. What happens is you send the letters to the credit bureau. Those letters get there in 5 days. The credit bureau then, well, they get to the credit bureau. Then they have that first 5 days to notify the creditor. So they go to the creditor. If they even notify the creditor, a lot of times they just send out a letter to you saying, we verified it. But no, they do it more than you know. Then the real window is 20 days. To make a long story short, 5 days to get there, 20 days to get verification, 5 days to get back to you. Time is your biggest ally in this whole game. If they can't get verification, they'll delete it off the credit report. Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that if I had a short sale, I could write a letter and say this is not mine? They go back and they try to get that information verified. It's not verified in the allotted amount of time, and it just gets deleted off my credit report,
Yep.
and my credit score just goes right back up.
Yes, ma'am. Mortgage companies that are no longer in business, piece of cake. They can't verify anything, they have to delete it, so they do. And the thing is, the credit bureau, if they delete something, they don't notify that person. Anytime there's an electronic transmission between a creditor and the credit bureau, there's a fee involved. So if they go to a creditor and the creditor says, I'm not even gonna verify because I don't wanna pay the $15 on a $200 debt, they delete it. But the credit bureau doesn't go back and go, hey, by the way, we deleted that because you didn't call us. So it's a big game, but if you play the game properly, you can win. And my automated system is perfect because I'll take a client's data, put it into my system, generate the letters, send them to the client, they print them, sign them, send them, and game on. They don't have to write them, they don't have to worry about the legalese, they don't have to worry about anything. Just have to sign them, put their ID in, and send them on.
And then on the bankruptcy one, the fact that you do it in August, when they're on vacation, that's another little twist. Hey, you gotta play it one way or the other. This is something that we've gone through before with
Yeah.
clients.
October, November, December, January, great time to dispute. Yes, ma'am.
Is all of this in that book?
Oh, no, my book is a real estate book. It's something different.
Okay.
But you can,
Have to contact you. if we
anytime.
Okay.
anytime. I've been asked to do books, but I like to fly under the radar. The credit bureaus actually have dispute recognition software. I have 28 letters that I rotate with my clients on a regular basis, so they can't track what I do, and I've been very successful for 6 years. The radio show I did with Mark stressed me to death, because as soon as they find you, like Lexington Law and these other credit companies, they're tagged and they're on. So it's harder to get results. The reason I offer my money back guarantee is because I know for a fact I can look at a credit report and know I can help that client. I won't waste anybody's time that doesn't. Let me tell you right now. I am too busy. I'm a one-man show. I have one person do a data entry. If I look at a credit report, I can't help that client, I'll tell you, and I'll tell your client right up front.
What
But
would be an example of one that you couldn't?
there isn't. I was just gonna say, I haven't had a client I haven't been able to help. And I will tell you this too, and I've done it with Mark many times, and I'll offer this to you all as well since you came tonight. If you have a client that's a VIP client, or you have a client that, has 1 or 2 items, I'll do it on the house. I won't charge the client. I'll do it for you. If it means putting something in your pipeline that's gonna turn business for you, I'm happy to help. Because there are a lot of people out there who have a medical bill they didn't even know, and they pull their credit for the first time in 10 years, and here's this medical bill. Medical bills are very easy to get off because under the HIPAA privacy laws, they can't verify what the medical bill is because it could indicate what the case was or what the ailment was. So a lot of times medical bills will come off. So if you've got a client that can turn money for you, I'm happy to help you. Just keep that in mind. Yes, sir.
And what is your normal fee for doing?
I charge $395 for a single client, $595 for a couple. For everything I do from start to finish. I joke around, I say my clients hire me for life, but God love them, I still have clients from 6 years ago that call me and, I need your help again. I just got you out. How'd you get back in? So, and I love to educate. So yeah, I kept it cheap because I have big volume. I spent the first year in this business belly to belly and always selling, and so I established over 200 loan officers, some of the top in this area that refer business to me. So that's why I keep it low. The other thing you gotta understand is I don't do anything that an attorney can't do. The only thing different between what I do and what a credit attorney would do for you is he would put the letters on his letterhead and send them directly from his office. But nothing I do, you can't do either. I don't do anything that a consumer can't do on their own. I just eliminate that 150 hours it takes that consumer to do it. Any other questions? Okay, BK, so tax liens. 15 years on unpaid, 7.5 years on paid from the date of payment. How many of you know that the IRS just passed a law and have put it into play